guys and Batman fans, welcome back to my channel. This is IZD Movie Reviews. My name is Alan Brincat, and now we're finally at the end of the Dark Knight trilogy reviews leading up to the Batman coming up. I'm seeing this movie on Wednesday, so I have to finish these reviews up. Last time I reviewed The Dark Knight, and 2 years ago I reviewed Batman Begins. Now, we're finally at the end of the Dark Knight trilogy. I am going to review The Dark Knight Rises. This movie is once again directed by Christopher Nolan and stars Christian Bale, Tom Hardy, Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Morgan Freeman, and Anne Hathaway. Now, here's the thing about The Dark Knight Rises. Obviously, spoilers if you have not seen The Dark Knight Rises. Where have you been? But the thing is, The Dark Knight Rises was actually the only film in the Dark Knight trilogy that I saw in theaters. I was very young when Batman Begins came out, and I was 8 years old when The Dark Knight came out. And at the same time, I really wish I could have saw those movies in the theater. So, The Dark Knight Rises was the only movie that I saw in theaters in the Dark Knight trilogy because I was 12. It was the right time for me to watch this movie. And I remember that this movie blew me away. I was a fan of Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, but The Dark Knight Rises, I remember that movie blew me away. But the thing is, I actually haven't seen this movie in a very long time, and I was so excited to revisit the Dark Knight trilogy leading up to the Batman. So The Dark Knight Rises, I was actually pretty excited to rewatch it because I haven't seen The Dark Knight Rises in so long. So I watched The Dark Knight Rises, and guys, this movie was as phenomenal as I can remember it being. I love The Dark Knight Rises. I remember that it was my favorite movie in 2012 when I did my 2010s rewind. It's still in my #1 because this movie is fantastic. And the funny thing, this movie was actually hated by some people. Some people didn't like The Dark Knight Rises, saying it's very nitpicky, it's trying to copy out The Dark Knight. And here's the thing about The Dark Knight Rises. The Dark Knight has become one of the greatest movies of all time. So it's pretty hard for Christopher Nolan to top The Dark Knight, because The Dark Knight is a great movie in general. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I can understand Christopher Nolan being like, I can't make this as good as The Dark Knight. He couldn't. It's impossible for a movie to top up. It's possible, it could be, but for like this, I don't think so. So I respect The Dark Knight Rises for being like not as good as The Dark Knight, but still a great movie in general. So the story. What's everyone been up to? It's been 8 years since after the events of The Dark Knight, and basically the world is not as peaceful as Gotham wanted, because they're covering up the events that Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight was murdered by Batman, and Batman is now officially a criminal. Commissioner Gordon is the only one that knows that Two-Face is basically a criminal, so everyone still thinks Harvey Dent is this hero. So Batman has to hide the fact that he is now a criminal. Everyone's committing him as a criminal, and Commissioner Gordon has to cover up this lie that Batman is basically a criminal and Harvey Dent is a hero. So basically, Bruce Wayne in this movie has been crippled. He's been isolated in a Wayne mansion and hasn't put on the Batsuit for 8 years. He basically has no life to live for because his love of his life, Rachel, died in The Dark Knight. He has nothing to live for. Michael Caine as Alfred tries to get him out there again, but he just couldn't, until the new villain comes into Gotham City to burn it to the ground, known as Bane, played by Tom Hardy. So that's when Bruce Wayne's like, I have to sit up again to stop Bane and save Gotham City once again. The Dark Knight Rises also has a fantastic screenplay. It's a perfect way to end off this really awesome trilogy. The thing is, this movie is not as good as The Dark Knight, and obviously it knows it. The Dark Knight is a great movie in general, but what The Dark Knight Rises does a great job at is concluding all the characters, following the events, not just from The Dark Knight, but Batman Begins, connecting these two and ending this trilogy the whole off. I just want to start talking about Tom Hardy as Bane, because this villain is so much badass than I remember it being. Tom Hardy as Bane is just, wow, he's one of the most intense characters out of this entire Dark Knight trilogy. Yeah, Joker is one of my favorite villains of all time, but Tom Hardy as Bane, he's the villain that I'm actually very, very scared for. He basically has one motivation, one thing only, to burn Gotham to the ground. And he is basically a terrorist in the film. Which is really well done. What Christopher Nolan does with the film is that he's not trying to make these bad guys supervillains. They're trying to make them bad guys in the real world. So the Joker is like the king of the mob, and Bane is basically a terrorist leader. But Bane, man, he is physically mental. Like, he is strong in this film. Like, when he punches a guy, you can feel like his skull has been broken. And Tom Hardy is just fantastic in this role. A lot of people's like, you don't understand what he's saying because he's wearing that mask. You don't understand what the hell he's saying. I understand him completely. I don't know what people are talking about. He's a pretty fun guy to impersonate.
Illusions cost you the strife. Victory is defeated you. The fire rises. Let the games begin.
Just Tom Hardy was just very iconic in the role as Bane. But this is also a great conclusion to Christian Bale as Batman. Basically, Bruce Wayne, like I say, he's been isolated for 8 years. He has no life to live for. And this movie is basically more of a character study than a Batman film, because Batman didn't really show up in this movie all that much. It's more about Bruce Wayne. It kind of felt like the right version of Iron Man 3, basically. Bruce Wayne is trying to learn how to become this hero again, because obviously, when he's out for 8 years, he wasn't the Batman then we know, because he's basically rusty in a way. Because he's been isolated for so long, so when he tries to go out and gets Bane, of course it's going to be very rusty and hard for him, because Bane was actually a member of League of Shadows like Bruce Wayne was trained, and he's much more trained than Bruce Wayne. And I just like that in the film, like Batman basically failing in the middle of the movie and him trying to rise up and become the Batman again. And I think Christian Bale, I have to give him more props in this movie. He is so good in this movie. He's great in this role in general for all the Dark Knight movies. Let's talk about some new additions to the trilogy. One of them, Anne Hathaway as Selina Kyle / Catwoman. Like, as much as I love Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns, she's obviously iconic, I think Anne Hathaway might be my favorite Catwoman in the entire Batman media. She's like the Catwoman in the real world, and I think Anne Hathaway just does a great job in the film. She played her role well, she's sexy, her costume is sexy, but also she's a great character in the film. She has a great chemistry with Batman and Bruce Wayne in the film. I just love her character in this film. I just love their chemistry and her acting in the film. She's just great. I think Anne Hathaway was perfect for this role. Also, we got a new cop in this movie, John Blake, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He's basically a cop that wants to be on top of the gang, and he's just a good person, you know? Like, he really wants to save Gotham. And I really like his character in the film. I love his journey throughout the film, and it makes me want to see more of his character, because Joseph Gordon-Levitt is also fantastic in this film. But the old characters, they're still there, you know? Like, Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon, he is great in this film. His character is very, very sympathetic, because he really wants to tell the truth about what actually happened throughout the events of The Dark Knight, but he has to come up with this line that Harvey Dent is his hero, and you really feel for Commissioner Gordon in the film. Gary Oldman does a great job. I even forgot to mention my Dark Knight review, Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox. He is great in The Dark Knight, and in this movie, he's also great. He's Morgan freaking Freeman. I love him more from Batman Begins. That's probably my favorite Lucius Fox era, but he is still great in this film. But Michael Caine as Alfred, this is probably my favorite I have seen Michael Caine as Alfred. Now, the thing is, he wasn't in the movie all that much. He was in the first 40 minutes of the film. But when he is in the film, my god, I was tearing up when I rewatched this film. Because Michael Caine is the one that tells Bruce Wayne, you shouldn't go up this guy is too strong. He could possibly kill you. Like you said, I will bury enough members in the Wayne family. That whole scene where Alfred tells Bruce that he's leaving, for him to understand that Bane is big, and he can't be Batman again because he's too rusty. He should just live a normal life. It's just really heartbreaking to see Alfred leaving in this film, and he really wasn't in the film all that much. And it's really sad, but Michael Caine, this is the best I've seen him as Alfred in this entire Dark Knight trilogy. But man, The Dark Knight Rises has some really iconic moments, especially the action scenes. Oh my god, there wasn't as much action than The Dark Knight was, but this movie does a great job with choreographing action scenes. To me, my favorite scene in this entire movie, of course, I think it's everyone's favorite scene in this movie, the underground fight scene between Batman and Bane. My god, Batman gets his ass kicked! It's basically rusty Batman versus Bane, and oh my god, that scene. I remember that scene haunts me as a kid when I first watched The Dark Knight Rises. I remember it was like the first time I've ever seen a hero lost in a fight, and it's really intense to watch, and still to this day, it's very intense. There's like no music in that scene. All you hear is sounds of waterfalls and fist punching, and it's really well done. That scene is very, very intense, but it's one of my favorite fight scenes in this entire Dark Knight trilogy. Also, Bane blowing up Gotham. That scene was very intense, where he blows up the football field and killing off the Doctor, who basically creates the bomb that Bane's going to blow up in Gotham City, and he kills him. And I'm like, holy shit, that scene is so intense! But this movie is also really, really heartbreaking as well. There is a lot of scenes that happens in this film where I'm like, holy shit, this is much more deeper than the other Dark Knight movies. And that's the perfect way to conclude this whole trilogy, and I thought Christopher Nolan does a great job directing this film. I also would say the score in this movie is also fantastic. Like, yeah, The Dark Knight did mention the score by Hans Zimmer with Joker's theme, with that violin string music. It's very, very tense. But The Dark Knight Rises, you have this chatter, which is Bane theme, that hey, hey, bada, bada, hey, hey, bada, bada. Also, Catwoman's theme, that piano ballad. Love that. It's so sexy. It's such a Catwoman type music, and I really love that in the film. But I would say, in my personal opinion, as much as I love The Dark Knight Rises still to this day, it is my least favorite in the trilogy. I think this movie has flaws. Like the other two movies, I find them so flawless, but this movie, it has a bit of nitpicks. Like there are some moments in the film that I find that they don't make sense in the film. One of the cases, after that amazing scene, I forgot to mention, where Bruce Wayne climbing up the well, that scene is just complete badass. But the question is, the prison's on the other side of Gotham or something like that, or outside of the country. So how does Bruce Wayne get back to Gotham? I wish they could have showed that in this film, in my opinion. I think everyone has that same complaint, unless people are just imagining it. I just find that, you know, like, how did Bruce Wayne get to Gotham? Also, Alfred. He's not in this movie all that much. He was in the first 40 minutes and the ending of the film. So, where has he been the whole movie? Is he vacationing? Because he did mention that when Bruce Wayne has been gone since Batman Begins, he vacationed and saw that vision. Where has Alfred been when Gotham is basically being burnt down? Like, I wish we could have seen Alfred more, maybe going through the events of the Gotham bombing and all that stuff, and Gotham burned to the ground. I wish we could have seen more Alfred, because Michael Caine is so fantastic in this film. And I hated Bane's defeat. I'm sorry, I just don't like the defeat with Bane, where Catwoman basically shoots Bane with the Batpod. I really don't like that defeat. That's probably my least favorite part of this entire freaking movie. I just love that this movie has not just the connections to The Dark Knight, but also to Batman Begins. It concludes all those two movies and just made it one finale movie. Like, I love that they bring back, you know, the League of Shadows and Ra's al Ghul's era. We even got a cameo from Liam Neeson returning as Ra's al Ghul. It's really cool to see. I love the connections between those two movies. That's how you do a freaking conclusion. Remembering moments from those last movies and bringing back in this movie. Overall, guys, The Dark Knight Rises is a great conclusion to the Dark Knight trilogy. This movie's amazing. I love Christopher Nolan's direction with the film. The characters are great. There are some slight nitpicks, but this movie is a great character study, a great crime drama, I would say. It's definitely different compared to the other movies, but The Dark Knight Rises is a well-done war film, concluding this whole trilogy in general, and I wish I could have seen more, but I think Christopher Nolan doesn't want to make more Batman movies. I think this is a perfect way to conclude the Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, and I am going to give The Dark Knight Rises an A. 9A plus because of those nitpicks. But guys, that is it. This is my Dark Knight trilogy reviews. Want to see my other reviews? They'll be at the end of this video. And with the Tim Burton and Joe Schumacher Batman films, I will review them when The Flash is coming out, so look forward to that. Cannot wait to see The Batman, my most anticipated movie of the year. That review is coming up very, very soon. Let me know what you think. What is your favorite movie in the Dark Knight trilogy? Let me know in the comments below. And what do you think of The Dark Knight Rises? Do you like the movie, hate the movie, or you thought it's okay? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you guys follow me on social media links down below. Facebook, Stardust, Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd. Keep contacting with me. And make sure you guys subscribe to my channel notified for my latest movie reviews and other movie related content. And have a nice day.